Guitar tips, just the tips, just for you. Guitar tips. Hello and welcome to another episode of Guitar Tips. My name is Adam Levy. And this is my video blog series here on YouTube. As you may know, I'm in the midst of a mini-series within the series. This is called the ABCs of Guitar Tips. If you want to know more about it, you can work your way backwards from here, but I'll get right into this week's topic, which is the letter H this week. Harmonized scales. Harmonized scales, and a really specific aspect of harmonized scales, because if we have a scale like the C scale, we could harmonize it in position more or less, kind of staying in one area that corresponds to a scale pattern. But I want to talk about harmonizing the scale across this way. Maybe you could think of that as a horizontal approach, and that's another H word that we can think about. So again, rather than trying to do it in one area like I'm doing now, we could do it this way. And what that does when you start to do it this way is it can help you connect things. A lot of guitar players, myself included, tend to practice in boxy areas, like you learn to play a scale here, and then maybe you learn to play it here, and you learn to play it here, and maybe here. There we go. The caged system. And that's a beautiful thing, but it can sometimes, if you're not careful, lead to having these areas that feel a little disconnected from each other. So as a counterbalance to that, I like to practice playing across the fretboard, and harmonized scales is a really good way to approach that in your practice time. So in order to do that, the first thing that we want to be able to do is to play a C scale just on one string. So I'm playing this on the B string right now. So that's the upper octave, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now if we're going to harmonize it, we're going to need to know where that scale is on all the other strings, because we're going to use all the other strings. And so on. So practice that first before you get too far into these harmonized things that we're going to do with different kinds of intervals. Work on being able to play a C scale on all 6 strings, just up and down, rather than across this way. You can stop here and do that, or if you already know that, you can just keep watching. Now, there's different types of intervals that we can use to harmonize the scale. On the sort of sweeter side would be thirds. So a third down from C. A third just means 3 scale steps, including the note that we start on. So this is 1, 2, 3. So a third down from C is A. And we could take that interval all the way through the scale. Now, this is a minor third, this is a minor third, this is a major third. The quality of the third may change, but it's still a third. So you could practice that, and of course you could do that on different string sets, but for right now we're just focusing on keeping the scale, the melody note on the B string as we work through the scale. So that's one of the sweeter intervals, is a third. Another sweet interval is the 6th. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a sixth down from C is E, if we're in the C scale, which we are. So now we just go up like this. You can play with it a little bit so it doesn't, it's not just straight up and down all the time. So that's the sound of sixths. And another sweet interval is the tenth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is A again. We had A when we were doing thirds. Now this is the A below that. So this is tenths. There we go. So that's the sound of tenths. So those three sounds, thirds, sixths, and tenths, tend to be the sweeter ones. Then if you want to get into some kind of more tense or tangy sounds, seconds will give you that. And again, there's different types of seconds within this, just because the scale itself is asymmetrical. So as one note moves in this pattern, the note below it has a slightly different pattern in terms of where the half steps and whole steps are. So here we're going whole step, half step, and down here we're going half step, whole step, whole step. It's just because we've started in different places within the scale, and that's what naturally happens. So that's a second. Another kind of tangy sound is the seventh. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So D. It's not quite as tense as the second, but it's definitely not as sweet as the sixth. We also have the ninth. That could be pretty tangy. And a ninth is just a second, but with an octave added to it. So second was C and B, ninth is C and B separated by an octave. And so on. Now you could do this with every kind of interval that you could imagine. You could do this in different keys. So far we've just been in the key of C. So ways to practice this, to really just go to infinity, would be different types of intervals, different keys, different types of scales. So far we've just done the C major scale, but you could do C melodic minor in sixths would give you this. So there's the melodic minor scale, there's the harmonic minor scale, there's all kinds of modes that you can make. Again, there's 12 keys, again, there's different types of intervals. And then another thing that you can do is make compound intervals where you have, say, a second and a third. So this is a second on top and a third below the note that was a second. So you'd have this. Back to C major. Let's do a wider interval. Let's do a sixth and a sixth. So a sixth down from C and then another sixth down from E, which is the sixth down from C. You get this. Now, obviously, you could take this and work on all this material for almost forever. Really, when you think of all the possibilities of different intervals, different compound intervals, different keys, different types of scales, different string sets. It's a lot of work to be done. I know that can be overwhelming. It's really up to you to slice it up into whatever kind of increments make sense to you within your practice routine. I would say you don't have to switch to doing all of your practice on this stuff. You could just add 10 minutes of this work to whatever else it is that you normally work on, and just see if over time that extra 10 minutes doing this other way of looking at the guitar might help you connect the dots. And that's really the big idea with this practice, is that it helps you open up the guitar and connect the dots, or connect the positions that you might feel boxed into. It's also another benefit that you would get from it would be to discover some new chordal sounds, different chord voicings and shapes that you might just simply not discover any other way. Just by these compound intervals and different kinds of combinations of things, you might find yourself putting your fingers down on two notes that you never thought of as being able to go together, or three notes or four notes that you didn't think would go together, and suddenly it makes a beautiful sound, and you're not totally sure how you got there, although if you retrace the steps of whatever you've been doing, you should have gotten there by some kind of logic, by doing compound intervals within a scale. So you should be able to figure out what it is you're playing and why it delights you or intrigues you, or whatever emotion or response you're having to it. If you're having a response to something that you discover this way, make sure you write down what the chord is and maybe some notes about how you got there, and think if there's some way that you can further explore that sound and make more out of it, so it's not just one neat thing in isolation, but actually something that you could play in other keys and other ways that still have that nugget of inspiration at the center of it. So there you go. That's harmonized scales across the fretboard. That's our lesson for this week from the ABCs of Guitar Tips. Here in Los Angeles, California, I'm Adam Levy. Stay tuned and take good care.